Hey, Juliet, how you doing?
Hello. I'm good. How are you, Carter?
I'm hanging in there. Yeah. Welcome everyone to Narrative Dissonance on Unsafe
That's right.
Space. Juliet, do you want to? Hey, you just do it.
Okay. Well,
Go ahead.
okay.
Say all the things.
Welcome. This is Narrative Dissonance on Unsafe Space. This is Carter over this way.
Oh yeah, I just switched us because I want you closer to the camera, so when I'm looking at you, I'm looking more at.
Well, that works great. I'm Juliet. Normally on this show, we talk to members of the alternative media about the potential misleading or straight up lies that the mainstream media is spouting.
I mean, if they happen to spout lies, not that it would happen.
Yeah,
right, but it could theoretically.
On occasion. And we like to talk about stories we aren't paying attention to but should be. It looks like this week it might just be a special episode of me and Carter.
Yes, we have Scotty Nell Hughes was supposed to join, but she hasn't joined yet. She did confirm, but we'll see. Sometimes things come up in people's lives. So if she joins, she joins. If she doesn't, we will continue on unabated, undeterred. We do have a book club coming up on
Sunday.
This Sunday.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. At 2 p.m. Eastern time. It's Slaughterhouse 5, and I'm not going to lie to you guys. If you haven't started, you still have time. It's such an easy read.
Yeah.
So
it is.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm rereading it just to prep, and it's so good.
It's one of those like super easy and fun reads. You just kind of sit down and you just want to go through the whole thing and be done. And it's like, it's not a slog. There's definitely books that are good but are slogs. This is like, it's like candy. You just keep eating it and then you're done.
Yep.
Also really quickly, we have a couple shows this week coming up. 451 Degrees is tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific. I think Alex is doing her show tomorrow. And also on Wednesday, Keith's Rebel Civics show, which is at 9 a.m. Pacific. He's actually interviewing Dennis Misagoy. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's running for Senate in Florida. He's on the Libertarian ticket, I believe. Not being a Floridian, I don't pay attention too much to Florida politics, but he'll be joining Keith on Wednesday. All right. Well, let's just jump into some stuff, Julia.
Okay.
And if Scotty shows up, we will pause and introduce her and steer the conversation that way. So do you have anything in particular that you've been bothered about that's been propaganda going on or stuff we should be paying attention to? Because I got a few.
Okay, I'll start with a kind of an easy one here. I'm gonna post a link. There you go.
Alrighty.
Okay.
I'll pull it up.
I just found the link to it. It's a little old. It's from October 11th, but it's something that just was driving me crazy when I first saw it. It's a tweet from the New York Times World, and it links to an article. Just the tweet itself is annoying. So this was the morning after Russia unleashed just tons of missiles on Ukraine after Ukraine bombed the bridge in Crimea. And so it says the Russian missile attacks that killed at least 19 people across Ukraine on Monday were wide-ranging, but they were not as deadly as they could have been. That has renewed questions over the quality of Russia's weapons. So basically, if Russia carries out strategic strikes against infrastructure and with minimum casualties,
damage, right,
like they suck. Like they have terrible weapons because they didn't kill tons of people. Like what?
It's amazing. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, right? So
Right.
if they indiscriminately kill a bunch of people, they're monsters. And
Yeah,
if they
war
target them
crimes.
attacks, they're incompetent.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I just thought that was a great spin. I mean,
That's not a false dichotomy at all.
no. Yeah,
There was
I mean,
sorry, go
that's
ahead.
been true of the entire conflict, that there have been civilian casualties, but for the most part, Russia has been very surgical in trying to avoid that, which, I mean, really in modern warfare should be applauded. Thank you for not just wiping out civilians, but apparently they're still war criminals.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm going to betray my ignorance on this because I just haven't paid attention. But I assume I'm gonna also assume that the reason I don't know it is because it hasn't been thrust in my face, which leads me to believe the answer is a certain way. The the pipeline that was bombed,
Right.
there was this like weird narrative at the very beginning that it was Russia, which would make absolutely no sense. It was like, we have some leverage over you, so we bombed it. Like, okay, that makes zero sense.
Right.
And then I guess there were some investigations, but I never heard the conclusion of them. So I assume that it means it wasn't conclusively Russia. Do you know where that ended?
I do. So okay, I think it was last week or the week before that Sweden, I think it was last week. So Sweden, Germany, and the United States were supposed to do like a joint investigation. And then Sweden came out and said, never mind. The classification of what we've found is too high to share with other countries. So they know who did it. They won't tell
Don't they get
anybody.
to classify it themselves? Isn't that their...
Right? Yes. So it wasn't something they wanted the world to know.
It's too high to share with other countries.
Right.
Including their allies? Like, I don't...
It's not even
or just
theirs. You know, it was such a bizarre answer. Yeah.
Yeah. So wait, that's basically code for it doesn't fit the narrative.
Right. Like we found
Can we
evidence.
move on to the next story? Hey, isn't the January 6th hearing still going on? Woo!
Yeah, exactly. It's wild.
Right. That's that was my suspicion that something like that had happened. That it was like, all right, we're not gonna do that. All right. Well, that's an interesting one. Did you see? Actually, there's been a lot of. There was an article in the Atlantic. Let me see if I can find it. You know, so sometimes we talk about like propaganda.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we use that word and just say like this is pure propaganda, right? Well, I've never seen them, and that's not never, but you rarely see them just kind of say. Basically, I'm not 100% admitting it's propaganda, but just like, so there was this article in the Atlantic. Here it is. I'll pull it up. And this is basically, it's called The Words About Ukraine That Americans Need to Hear. And this is about basically how we need to propagandize people so that they support the war, and we're not doing it right. That's why there's skepticism, because we're not doing it right. And the summary here is wars are won by deeds, but also by persuasive moral arguments. And we don't have to go through the whole article, but the gist of this article is, you have to give a moral reason for people, which is why we need to hammer in on like, hey, Russia's bad, Russia's bad, Russia's bad. Here's all the things that they're doing wrong, which I don't actually discount. I'm sure they're killing people because they invaded a country, and that's what you do when you're killing people. It doesn't make it right. But I'm sure that also means minimizing anything that Ukraine is ever doing, right?
Right.
So that's the moral argument. And then the other one was this one really was interesting to me. I'm fascinated by this because it's an overt recognition that there is a uniparty that is for whom interventionism is important, and that the non-interventionists on both sides are the baddies. And like we have to come together as Republicans and Democrats to hate on the radical elements of both of our parties that want to stay home. And so that let me just read this part. Where is it? Here we go. In the United States, the likely next Speaker of the House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy, in a gesture to the neo-isolationist wing of the Republican Party. That this feels like a slur, even though I wouldn't say neo-isolationism is a slur, but it feels like it somehow. The neo-isolationist wing of the Republican Party has indicated that it is time to curtail aid to Ukraine. The motley collection of so-called realists who think that Russia's crimes are irrelevant. Now, by the way, that's a mass mischaracterization, right? There's a difference between saying, I don't think we should be involved, and saying their crimes are irrelevant. But this is this, this person doesn't care. Isolationists, admirers or tools of Russia. And America firsters have kept a running, if muted, line of criticism. Not so much of the Zelensky government as of the American burden in supporting him. And then this person goes on to say, like, this, McCarthy's views have nothing to do with principle because he's not principled. But then he says, he talks about xenophobia in the Republican Party, and that's the reason they don't want to get involved in Ukraine. But they are back. So he's talking about the kind of isolationists, but they are back and need to be addressed, as do comparable movements on the left of the Democratic Party. So this is an overt admission that, yep, we are, the important thing is support of the deep state and the massive military spend and interventionist policies of the United States government, and both the left and the right, anyone who is against that on either side is the enemy. I found that
wow,
shockingly honest, actually.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely said the quiet part out loud. I mean, I feel like there's just we've got 2.5, 3 generations of people that haven't really experienced. I mean, of course, we had like the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, but it was so like removed from Americans' like day-to-day lives that I feel like we still have like two or 3 generations worth of people that don't fully grasp what actual war is like. Not war where you're fighting, like the terrorists. War where you're fighting another country that can attack your homeland at any given moment. I mean, so to me, it's
like
insane.
An enemy that's more on your level, like someone your own size.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we went into Iraq, like they basically didn't have an air force, and we come in with jets and stuff, but they're advocating for an escalation with Russia. Like, I can't wrap my head around why anybody would encourage that.
Well, I mean, I think it comes, so I think it just comes down to this narrative that the U.S. needs to be the world's police, and my guess is, I mean, I don't want to be too cynical about it, but my guess is it's driven by, was it Eisenhower's military industrial complex, right? I mean, it's if you think about how Washington works, right? So when the Republicans are in charge, they hire out of a bunch of think tanks for their bureaucrats and their advisors. And so like they all get jobs when the Republicans are in charge. But then when they lose and it's the Democrats' turn, a lot of those people, they just like think tanks are kind of the green room for people that are involved in the deep state politics. And so like they go sit in the green room and get paid through sometimes government-backed NGOs, sometimes I'll loosely say philanthropically backed NGOs, but a lot of that philanthropy as Yemen and like the Saudi Arabian royalty, right? So they get paid to sit in the green room of think tanks for a while the other guys, the think tanks, the Democrats who had been sitting in think tanks, they now go into the administration and get their jobs there. And then it's just kind of this back and forth where there's this nice little safety net for anyone who's involved, and they can kind of stay in they can stay close to power in Washington. But to do that, they have to what it means is that they're all in alignment about the power needing to be in Washington and and the ever increasing amount of it, right? So anyone who was like, I think we should dismantle all of these 3-letter agencies and we should be, isolationist, which isn't a bad word, by the way. Hey, we should be isolationists. We should mind our own business. We've got skyrocketing debt. Things are falling apart. Let's stay home. That person's never going to get a job at a think tank that Qatar funds.
Right.
Like, that's just not going to happen. So those people they're not part of the milieu of Washington, D.C. And so you naturally you're going to just have this kind of, as Trump called it, the swamp. Like that's what that is. That's what that is.
Yeah. I feel like people are just maybe Hollywood plays a role in this, but just like very ignorant as to what actual warfare entails. Because if you weren't, you wouldn't encourage things that could lead to war.
It's reckless. Yeah, it's reckless. But again, one of the points this article makes or one of the claims is that it's the people who don't want to be involved in this war that are short-term thinkers, because so the argument goes, if we don't stop Russia here, then they will go on to annex a bunch of Baltic states and I guess eventually all of Europe. And China will look at that and say, aha, and they'll take Taiwan and like everything will unravel. And part of me wants to say, yes, so. Right. Like, I mean, none of that is America. So let's just, from an American perspective, go, okay, all bad. We don't like it, but still not us, just to point out. So, and B, it's like, there's no counter argument to that because it's just projection of like, well, this will happen.
Right.
I don't know. Will it happen? It's not like Ukraine isn't part of NATO. So it's not like, and that, which is part of the reason.
Right.
Our threats to make it part of NATO is part of the reason it's on, being invaded right now. So there's this forgetfulness of like the US's involvement in any of this. Like we didn't tee it up and poke the bear. And now it's like, oh, we poked the bear a lot and now he's angry. You better shoot the bear. You better get in a fist fight with the bear because otherwise he'll come to your campsite and destroy it. It's like, well, maybe stop poking the bear. Shut up. Go home.
Right.
Like, leave it alone. And it doesn't mean you condone what the bear is doing. If you can, I'm not opposed to, you want to make moral arguments against it and criticize them. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the government controlling economies, but if you're going to, you can do sanctions and that kind of stuff and be like, look, this is, we don't approve of this. That's all fine. But, I think it was Scotty actually who, it's too bad she's not here because she tweeted out this comparison, and I think it was a retweet from somewhere else, but it was like the mainstream media before the Ukraine invasion and after the invasion of the Ukraine. And before the Ukraine invasion, it was all, it was all headlines about how corrupt it was, how it was a bunch of Nazis, it was this horrible place. And then the moment the invasion happens, there's this whitewashing of the entire thing, and it's this Manichaean view of like, oh, these are the evil guys and these other people are the good guys. It's like, well, real life is more nuanced than that. Neither one of them is like, we're not talking about, neither one of them are the founding fathers. There's no like, hey, we're fighting for individual rights over here and here's Mao coming over, and like, that's not what's happening.
Right.
Again, not to, it's every time you say that, people are like, so you condone blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, you don't have to condone it, but.
Right. Well, I mean, I get like we have this thing is Americans were very guilty of this, that every situation has to have like a good guy and a bad guy. sometimes it's two bad guys fighting with each other.
Right. Or different degrees of bad for different reasons or whatever. Right. There's nuance.
Right. But just because one is the aggressor doesn't immediately absolve the other side of everything they've ever done, which is kind of how we're treating this conflict.
And the truly innocent people in this entire thing are the Ukrainian and Russian citizens.
Absolutely.
Because they're not doing this. Like, they're both getting, I don't know if the Russians are in draft mode right now, but like they're both being foisted. They're both having this conflict foisted upon them by leaders. I mean, and granted, yes, Russia was the aggressor there. I understand that, but you know, not the Russian citizens.
No.
So yeah, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. And I don't and I don't understand why we can't. If you say, "Hey, my priority is my country," that's somehow this. This like outside, yeah. That's like, is that outside the Overton window now? Like, hey, like I get there's lots of bad things going on, but can we? There's enough going on here that I'm concerned about here. Can we worry about that?
Right.
And that's the crazy xenophobic, like you said, like, that's the xenophobic, racist, fascist thing to do. Is like,
worry about
my country. Like,
first.
Yeah, it's akin to saying, yes, I don't want any child to go hungry, but I worry about my own child first. That's not bigotry. Like, that's just like my own child first. That's first where the food goes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and the idea of the United States being the world policeman, mostly because we were like the superpower and we had the ability to police things. But every time I think about that, I'm like, then what is the point of the UN? Why do we have the United Nations if it's our job to police the entire world? And we don't. I mean, we allow a lot of things to happen that we decide not to get involved in.
Yeah, no, if it's politically expedient, we let things happen, you know. If it's
All
politically expedient to remind everyone, we arm and train Osama bin Laden to take down superpowers in an efficient manner through wars of attrition. Like, if that's convenient, that's what we do. We being, I hate to throw you and I in the list of we, but like
we, yeah.
Right. So yeah. All right. Someone else says, oh, you know, that's actually, I will say this. That's one of the things I did. Trump didn't do much of, like, I was kind of hoping for bull in the China shop behavior. Right. So like he'll either defund stuff or break it beyond repair. Right. And that was kind of the hope. And he didn't do much of that at all. But what he did was he did at least, which has been done, call the UN out and like step back from the UN. And I think, you say we've been the world's police. I'm not 100% sure that we've been effective.
No,
like,
I don't.
How do we like? It's like we're the dirty undercover cops who are like, it's like, hey, I'm gonna bust a narco ring. It's like, weren't you running the narco? Yes, but like everything's entrapment. It's like, oh, like it's like we spawned these 3-letter agencies that go, do these horrible things, and then when it's time to burn someone, when they want to burn an asset, they burn the asset, and suddenly we're at war with that asset, and they were always bad and evil, and but it's like, I don't think we can pat ourselves on the back and say we've done a good job policing the world.
Definitely not. No. I mean, if we had it, we wouldn't have conflicts like all over the place, but it's human nature. I mean, you can't stop conflict. That's a utopian idea. Like, it's just unrealistic. It's human nature.
Yeah. And I've said this before, which I'll just say again, which is like, if you really care about human rights, it just is the general ethical banner that all this is under, is like, we care about people. That's what it is, right?
Right.
If you care about human rights, You don't send the CIA in to covertly overthrow governments. You don't, you know, bombastically praise democracy while, sending missiles into weddings and villages and having drone strike Tuesdays. What you do is you explain to the world, hey, you know what US did that was different than everywhere else, that is better and politically? We have this idea of individual rights, and we tried to achieve that through this constitutional republic where there's things you're like, here's some rights that you have and that exist a priori to government, and we're not supposed to violate them. And like we tried, we were failing a little bit here, but this is what's gotten us this far. Here's a copy of the US Constitution translated into your local language. Here's the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers. Here's some background. Go for it, because you can't externally come in and implement a government like that and expect it to work without the people understanding and supporting it. I mean, that's what happened in Afghanistan. It doesn't work. And frankly, we can see that US is proof of that. And now that the population has forgotten everything about why our government is the way it is and what the purpose of it was, we're essentially no different than European countries. So you need the population to understand that, and they don't, and no one has been saying it, and they've been substituting feel-good language like democracy and freedom, which they don't really mean in any significant way. It's just an abstract, and and arming people.
It's worked out really well.
Yeah, it's great. All right. By the way, someone says, who is Serpico in this dirty cop scenario, Carter or Juliet? I think it's Juliet. Yeah. And she does need a revolver. I agree with this. Also, someone says, Scott Horton had a good foreign policy debate against Bill Kristol. Scott raised a point similar to what Carter said. I vaguely remember that debate. I'm not trying to poach from Scott, but I might be inadvertently. I vaguely remember that debate. And, Bill Kristol represents that purple party, right? He's part of that establishment. All right. So that was one thing I saw. Do you want to go to another one that you've got, or should I bring up something I've got again?
We have that video. Gosh, that guy's name will not stay in my head.
Me neither. Rishi Sunak.
There we go.
I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah. So quick background. The UK has a new prime minister after 44 days of the last one. It just implosion in parliament. And now we get this guy who ran, but then there was some controversy because his wife is an heiress. She's worth like $800 million. Accusations of not paying taxes right or whatever. And it just kind of tanked his chances. And now here he comes, rising like a phoenix. And he's a really big fan of central bank digital currency, which is scary because the UK's economy is really struggling right now. And what better time to implement something like that?
Yeah, can we, before we even play this then, because now let's reiterate this, let's rehash the conversation we had just before we went live, because this is how I feel about this UK thing, and I need to express utter ignorance to what's going on in the UK because I haven't been following. And maybe some people in chat know a little bit more, but here's what the narrative that I'm getting. So the narrative I'm getting is that Truss comes in as the Tory and has this plan for reducing inflation that involves what I would call more free market-y type of stuff. Like we need to reduce regulation, we need to reduce taxes and that kind of thing. Which doesn't sound like it could cause an implosion economically to me, in like certainly not a lasting one. I can see a perturbation happening if you do stuff, but like none of this is like, oh my God, the sky is falling. But she did this, and the sky kind of did fall, at least if you're watching CNBC. Like there's banking crisis and everything, all hell breaks loose in the financial markets. Things are a mess. And so she pulls back a little bit, fires her finance minister, brings another one in. They roll back all this stuff, and then she resigns in disgrace.
Yes.
And it seems like the story is, see, the crazy capitalist people like absolutely destroy economies because they're financial idiots. And that might be true. Maybe I don't understand the economy in the UK. Maybe whatever they did had this massive effect, and it was bound to be a long-term, not just a short-term perturbation. And it was like, I don't know exactly what they did, and I don't know exactly the crisis that ensued. But I will say this: I'm awfully suspicious, because now she's out. It was a way to discredit all kind of free market kind of stuff in one big heap.
Right.
And this guy, who's like a World Economic Forum poster child,
Yep.
comes in to have centrally managed economy crap as the savior, and he gets to do it under the banner of conservatism,
which is insane because none of his policies are conservative at all. Yeah. I mean, it's all, I mean, it's definitely, there's something fishy, but I think you're right. I think it just discredited those economic policies. However, I just don't understand how they could even point to her policies, because rising inflation, massive energy costs, like all of this stuff is happening at the same time. And you can't isolate just her policy and the effect that that's having when you have.
But there was some short-term banking thing that happened immediately, and I don't know what it was because I wasn't paying attention. I just heard like through the grapevine on CNBC them like, "Oh my God, what's happening in London?" And it was like, "Oh, I don't know, what is happening in London." But I guess here's the thing: I know for certain that long-term free market capitalism works better. But it's also possible that in the short term, when you move to some more free market solutions, it hurts some people who are busy making money under the current system. And like, there's a redistribution that happens. There's a rebalancing, and like, that can be painful. Like that could happen. I'm just not sure exactly what went on. Let's watch this thing that you found. Because I haven't seen this, and I'm super curious. All right. So this is the guy that's going to replace her. I don't know. I think it's official or almost official at this point, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if they've done like the official vote or oath or whatever they do.
The king hasn't said yes, right? But
okay. All right. But yeah, it's pretty much for sure him.
I think. Yeah. Or maybe not the official vote either. I don't know. But I think it's a done deal. Okay. So here we go. Let's see how this goes.
Now to say that under the UK's presidency, the group of the world's 7 most advanced economies, the G7, is launching a set of public policy principles for retail central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. Central bank digital currencies could be a digital version of money, a bit like a digital banknote that could be used alongside physical notes and coins. Unlike most of the digital money people use daily today, it would be issued directly by a central bank, like the Bank of England in the UK. And governments and central banks across the world are working together, looking into what having a digital currency might mean in practice. This includes issues that people care about, such as ensuring users' money would be safe and secure, that it could work with other ways to pay, would be energy efficient and available to everyone. A potential CBDC could offer businesses and consumers new ways to pay in the future. It's all part of the wider story of digital innovation that has delivered benefits to millions around the world and in the UK. The decision on whether to launch a central bank digital currency is for each country to make, and no G7 jurisdiction has yet made that choice. These decisions raise important questions about the reshaping of our economy, financial systems, and the way in which people interact with money and payments. That's why working together and careful evaluation with our international partners is essential. In the UK, earlier this year, I announced a new joint task force between the Treasury and the Bank of England to look into a potential CBDC as a complement to cash and bank deposits. We're also hearing from firms, technology experts, and others. Under the leadership of the UK, this report today will help support and inform exploration of CBDCs in the G7 and beyond. With these principles, the G7 is leading an important step change in the global policy conversation. The report covers a range of important matters, such as financial stability, cyber resilience, energy efficiency, privacy, inclusion, and tackling illicit finance. These factors should all be considered when designing and potentially delivering a CBDC that would be fit for the future.
Inclusion.
Our shared objective is to
Inclusion.
ensure that
My
CBDCs
money
will be
needs to be
grounded
included.
in long-standing commitments to transparency, the rule of law, and sound economic governance. The G7 will continue its work in this important area, working with others to enhance understanding and use of these principles. We're excited to be taking a leading role with G7 members in publishing this exploratory work, bringing money and finance into the 21st century.
He almost put me to sleep, even though it angers me.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
simultaneously sleepy and livid. I don't know if
Right.
that works.
So he's not only a big fan of it, like he helped push reports and get the idea out there. Yeah, that is scary to me because I feel like if they can pull it off in the UK, they'll be able to pull it off here so much easier.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't understand the importance, the significance of central bank digital currency. I know this is going to sound hyperbolic. I think it's more dangerous tool to give the government than the invention of nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Because nuclear weapons, even an evil government is going to use them sparingly. There's like so much obvious disaster. They're not very precise. You got to kill a bunch of innocent people with them. CBDC is the dystopian authoritarian's dream. It's like it's a game over for the entire population. There's no freedom after CBDC.
Yes.
It's the, and by the way, what's annoying about it is it's the exact opposite of digital currencies, like of cryptocurrency. It's the cryptocurrency is all about, decentralization. No one's in control. It's outside of the government's reach. Obviously, they're trying to pull it into their reach now, and that's part of the current status of cryptocurrency. But CBDC is just ground up. Like, imagine every time that you went to buy anything, it was contingent upon how the government felt about you in that moment. That's what
Right.
CBDC is.
Yeah.
That's
I
what
mean,
it is.
the absolute control they would have over every single person is just, it's almost hard to fathom.
Yeah. It's like in the Handmaid's Tale, the beginning of the Handmaid's Tale, there's a scene where the woman whose name I forget, the handmaid, goes in to buy cigarettes at a shop. This is like right when the totalitarians are taking control. And she goes in to buy cigarettes or something in the shop, and like she can't. There's no like currency anymore. It's all basically CBDC, different tech, but same result. She goes in to buy cigarettes and she can't because she has no money anymore, because only in this particular dystopia, which I think is exactly the wrong thing to be worried about, only men can have money and the women can't have any money, and like they shut down all the women's accounts. That's not the risk that we have now with CBDC, but it's certainly, I mean, if you've ever been banned from Twitter or YouTube, or know anyone who's been banned from Twitter or YouTube, those are the targets for this kind of thing.
Well, I mean, and it could so quickly spiral. All they have to do is implement some, green energy policy, and all of a sudden you're not allowed to buy gas for the rest of the month.
That's
because
right.
you've already bought too much.
Right. Your carbon footprint is over the limit.
Exactly.
Yep.
And then, like that plays the ESG score, then suddenly you're unhireable because you have a terrible ESG score, which means you're a terrible person. and they don't want
It's
to.
a-
You know, it's just so
Yeah,
totalitarian. Yeah, I mean, it's just
absolutely.
dystopian, but like it. I don't know. Like it's kind of like the reality we're facing right now.
Yeah, the technology that was in the nightmares of the dystopian science fiction novelists decades ago is here. It's
Mhm.
all here. And as it turns out, since we didn't actually fight the philosophical battle to defeat the authoritarian tendencies of our overlords, they're looking at it as an option, right? Because
Right.
there it is. It's like that, that episode of Black Mirror, where the person has like a social credit score on their phone.
Yes.
Did you see that episode?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I wouldn't normally recommend, like, I don't like a lot of Black Mirror stuff. Like, some of it's okay. That one,
Yeah.
I totally recommend if you can go watch that without paying Netflix or whatever. If you can go watch Black Mirror, go watch that episode of Black Mirror if you haven't seen it. Because I was almost surprised that they made it.
Right.
Because it's like, yeah, that's what's happening. Why are you not scared? Like, why are you?
Yeah.
You're just saying it right out there. Like, that's what's going on. Like, I guess they figured no one will care. No one will see the obvious. It's almost like stating the intentions right out in the open. Like, yep, this is what's going to happen, and it's bad. Like, the episode doesn't glorify it. It shows it as the dystopia that it is.
Right.
But, I don't know. That's a good one. I'm glad. Thanks for sharing that, dude. And so he'll be the PM of the UK. Congratulations, all you Brits. He's your man. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to take it out. Yeah, congratulations, Brits. Good job. Here's another example of something that I was surprised was on television. Did you see the MSNBC panel of Trump voters?
No.
I was really shocked that they even allowed this to be aired. This is I don't actually know who the reporter is, but these are Trump supporters, and this is a tweet from Mike Cernovich. These are Trump supporters from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And this reporter is asking them about January 6th. And she's saying some things as if they should just go along with what she's saying, but they're pushing back on some of the narrative. And she doesn't have like good counter arguments to any of it. Because I don't think she expected it, which is why I can't believe this was on television. So let's just watch this for a sec, and we'll see.
Mastriano was at the insurrection and he was photographed breaching one of the restricted areas. Is that okay?
Which area? Because I saw a video where Capitol officers were taking away barriers and unlocking
Opening doors.
for people. So,
Yeah.
that's it.
I mean,
They opened the gates.
So
and
it
let them
shouldn't
in.
be disqualifying for an elected official.
No,
If
definitely.
they
So I just want to pause for a second. She just backs right up out of that one. Like,
Right.
she's like, "Oh, he was breaking in." Well, really? Was it like, okay, well, like, just done? So an elected official should be allowed to, like, she certainly did not expect them to know that it was not the break-in she was describing. So here we go.
Right.
if they
No, as long as he
participated in
didn't-
January
he
6th.
didn't strike anybody. He didn't hurt anybody.
And the only one that died was a protester there, not a Capitol
An
police
unarmed
officer.
female veteran was
That's
shot
the
by
only one that
police.
died.
That's the only one who died.
A police officer did die.
No,
Not
it was
a
a
heart attack.
stroke.
That's
That's not on site.
caused by that. That's because
Right.
he shouldn't have been a police officer. It was one woman.
So
who was
what do
shot.
you make though overall of January 6th?
Okay, so just pause again. She's like, she lobs another one in there. Oh, a police officer died though, and they're all going, well, no, not on site, and it was of a heart attack, and like that's not or stroke or whatever. And she doesn't argue.
Right. She's
Just like, well, I lost that one. Like, yep.
Yeah. Dang
I
it,
tried
they were-
that. That failed.
Right. That's great.
All right. Here we go. Going.
6. I mean, it was watching that footage. It was pretty disturbing. I mean, there were people throwing excrement at the walls, and it was our, it's the Capitol.
It looked a lot like Antifa's
Yeah,
actions
it looked
to
a
me.
lot, except on a much smaller scale. It looked the same as the Black Lives Matter riots.
That's what I saw, the
Every single
similarities
city
to
around
be.
the country, not just
Minneapolis
one.
burns, Kenosha
But so it's
burns,
okay just
Waukesha
because
burns.
one side that you
No,
disagree with.
I'm
it's
saying
okay.
Okay, I just want to pause this. And then she's like, so they compare it to correctly, then compare this to Antifa and BLM.
Yep.
And this is the dishonesty of the media. And this is why people hate the media. She's like, well, so it's okay if one side does it. And I don't think anyone really says this in the response, although we'll see when we play it in a moment, but they're not saying it's okay. What they're saying is, Miss MSNBC person, you're a liar. And the problem is, you said it was okay. You did not sit down with a bunch of leftists and berate them over the mostly peaceful protest. You didn't say you're burning cities and hurting people. What are you doing, Democrats? You didn't do that. And here you are with Trump supporters acting as if you're very concerned about violent protests. And that's the dishonesty. And that's what these people absolutely despise. I don't think anyone calls her out directly for it, but like, and I think a large percentage of the American people are starting to not see any difference between the Democrats, the radical left, and the press. They're all the same. And I don't think the press understands that people don't view them as a third party anymore.
Oh, no. No, I don't think they get it either. I think that's why you see these like clips from Don Lemon, whatever, that he keeps having people come on.
Did
and
you
then
call him Don Lemon?
Yes. Like he like people keep pushing back, similar to this interview where it doesn't go the way they expected it, but the media is so insulated. They live in their bubble. They really have no idea what the temperature of the rest of the world is. So I'm not surprised that they're getting kind of blindsided by pushback. And they probably truly believe that the public thinks that they're unbiased.
Right. She expects to be taken seriously by these people, and they're like, no, you're our enemy.
Right.
All right, let's let them keep going.
Okay.
This is a fun interview.
Antifa infiltrated.
Good for one, it's good for the other.
Anybody
I
who
don't see it
harmed
that way.
anybody who caused property destruction, that needs to be dealt with.
Yeah,
but if you're
on
there
either
making your voice heard at the people's house, no less,
Yeah.
that's again, it's a fundamental constitutional right of an American citizen, and people should not be being held political prisoner because of it.
For misdemeanors. That's East Germany.
That's East Germany.
Tactics.
Yeah, that's what's scary.
It was an actual fiery but mostly peaceful protest. And the other ones that were the opposite.
Was the protest legitimate in your
Our
eyes?
administration, I
Because
feel like, is using it as their Reichstag fire.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they're using it as.
Mhm.
The reporter's like, I thought that's a great analogy. They're using it as the Reichstag fire. Yeah, they are.
do you think that President Trump could have quelled the violence that day?
Not him
I don't
personally.
I don't think so,
I
no.
don't think so.
It started while he was still speaking. I was actually there. I was there to see what I thought was going to be the last time I ever saw Trump, little did I know.
So did he tell everybody to go and start riding?
No,
I didn't think so.
no, and it actually, I stayed for the whole speech, like a ton of people did.
Mhm.
And then we all headed to the Capitol because he said, let's go to the Capitol and peacefully let our
Peacefully,
voices
keyword.
be heard. And we get to the Capitol, we're like, what the hell's going on? Because it had already happened.
I'm pretty sure I saw Democratic operatives instigating people to cross
totally.
barriers.
So
Wow.
I'm amused by this.
I can't believe they aired that.
Right. Can you believe? I
Yeah.
was like, how could they air this? It makes
Right.
them look really bad.
Yeah.
I think they just assume that the people who watch MSNBC are so brainwashed to the narrative that these people's arguments will fall on deaf ears and they'll just seem ridiculous, and that will be,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's got to be it,
Right.
right? She's like, oh, they didn't agree with me, so therefore they must be dumb,
Right.
right? And that's
Yeah.
like,
I mean that they they were ready to go though. I love that. That was
yeah.
heartwarming. Jeez. And until they said that, I had totally forgotten that it started before he finished speaking.
Right.
And that's a
Right.
good walk. That's not right there. I mean, it takes a minute to walk over there. So
Yeah, it's amazing. And there was another clip going around today of, so it's and again, I don't think the media is getting this. It's the people realizing that the media is just they're clearly on a particular side. They selectively report, and they have selective outrage. So they're outraged at, Trump's lack of timely de-escalation. Like, he didn't fast enough say slow down and be peaceful. Like, he didn't do that quick enough, and that's their big outrage. And obviously they're arguing that they can see through his innuendos and they hear the dog whistles that no one else does, and they know this is exactly what he wanted people to do.
right.
And then on the flip side, there's this video going around of Nancy Pelosi saying, like, I hope Trump comes over here, I'll punch him in the face and I'll go to jail, but it'll be worth it, or I'll be happy about it. It's like, that is, if Trump said that about Nancy Pelosi, we would never hear the end of it. There would be a committee investigating it right now still.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will say, I think because throughout his presidency, Trump was calling out the media, fake news, like, you're lying, you're misrepresenting. We've seen it with our own eyes, how they shorten clips to act like he said something he didn't say.
Right.
But I think really the tipping point where it became, unless you're truly brainwashed, it became undeniable that they're misleading and lying, was the difference in coverage of the George Floyd summer and then January 6th. Because even when they poll, people don't care. That's why, like, the hearings, nobody watches them.
Right.
They delayed it because there was a hurricane in Florida, because they knew no one would, like, they would have like 0 viewers if they did it on the same day. But it's a made up outrage that really most people don't care. It was one day, whereas like the BLM riots that lasted for months all over the country.
Right.
And that, you can't deny that. Like, the way they portray it, I mean, anybody with half a brain can see that, they're lying.
Right. There was no burning buildings on January 6th.
No.
Yeah.
Minor actual damage, really. A couple windows.
Right. And most average people are like the guy in the Adidas beanie or whatever. He was like, well, look, people who hurt people or did property damage, like, yeah, sure, they should be held accountable. But people wandering around, like, shouldn't be in jail for a misdemeanor. Of trespassing. What, like, that's ridiculous. But you would have to, all of Antifa would be in jail if that were, and most of the Democrats in every major city for wandering around streets during protest, if they were going to be, going to be fair about that. There's one other thing I want to, Juliet, did you see the quote national report card that came out?
Oh, on like student. Yes. I saw a picture. Like I don't remember the numbers, but I remember it was horrible.
Yeah. It's almost as if it's too bad. You know what's too bad? It's too bad no one warned them that this was bad. It's too bad no one was saying, it's really not that much of a threat to children. Maybe you should keep school up. So here we go. Student math and reading scores have dropped significantly since 2019. This is an article in Reason by Elizabeth Nolan Brown. New results from the National Assessment of Education Progress offer more evidence that students fell significantly behind during school shutdowns. I mean,
who could have possibly foreseen that?
Yeah. Across most states and demographic groups, 2022 math and reading scores are down relative to 2019, falling to their lowest levels since the 90s in reading.
Wow.
But there's a small silver lining. The data suggests students began this year to recover from pandemic disruptions. We don't have to read all this, but the National Assessment of Educational Progress is a test given to 4th and 8th graders. It bills itself as the nation's report card. The report this year isn't great. She also mentions that, where is it? I think the ACT scores. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah. It's not just young children who have seen several ACT scores across are also at their lowest point in 3 decades.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Emma Camp. We talked to her.
Yeah. We should have her back to talk about it. But yeah.
Geez, ACT scores. I mean, I know it's a test that people struggle with, but like it's not the hardest one you take.
Is that the one where the highest score is like 32 or 36 or something?
I can't remember. Honestly.
I'm so old.
I mean, in high school for me, it was just kind of like, oh, I have to take that. Okay. Like, I don't know. But it's interesting too, because I'm not shocked it's showing up in the high school students even more than small children, because they were all sitting there with their cameras turned off or pointed at the ceiling all day during the class. And do we really, any of us actually believe they were paying attention and learning anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously of like, it's a mixed bag, because I would actually celebrate the drop in math and reading scores if there was a greater drop in indoctrination.
Right.
Like, I think that's a trade-off. I'd be like, I can tutor math and reading at home.
Right.
So like, okay, let's not have the indoctrination. So yeah, I'm a little bit, it's a mixed bag on that for me, but yeah, I mean, it's just frustrating because there are those of us who were before the pandemic saying, and during the pandemic saying, stop. We were the grandma killer, horrible people. And, you couldn't even say, hey, there will be consequences.
Right.
And now, lo and behold, there's consequences. And this is another pet peeve of mine. I can't stand it when people say it's because of the pandemic or it's because of COVID. It was not because of COVID. It was not because of the pandemic. It was because of government behavior. It was government policy. It wasn't, COVID didn't lower math scores. Government policy lowered the math score. Government policy did that, not COVID. COVID didn't cause a bunch of businesses to close and just get added to Jeff Bezos' bottom line. That was government policy. And I would hope that I don't remember what Reason said, but I would hope that magazines like Reason make that distinction, because they're not the same thing. Right. And that's one of the things that they want us to do. They want to start conflating. So what they're going to do, and we've seen this already, we're starting to see negative consequences of government policy being discussed. And what the press is going to make sure they do is they're going to always cast it in light of a COVID. COVID was the problem, because of course COVID is we use the word natural in quotes, but a natural phenomenon. Like, COVID was not.
Right.
COVID's not a government policy, so they can. It seems like force majeure when they do it that way. It's like, well, it's an act of God. Like this thing happened, no one can help it, and here's the consequences that we're now studying, and we care very much about these consequences, as opposed to here are the consequences of the policies that we advocated. In fact, not just advocated, coercively enforced for a couple of years.
Yep.
Because the latter requires them to take responsibility.
Well, right, which of course they're never going to do. It wasn't their fault. They did what they had to do for the greater good.
Right, just like
Which,
Stalin.
Yeah, it's terrifying when the government tells you that. It's never a good thing.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you have anything else that you think we should discuss today?
Did you follow the shocking news that Boston University was doing gain of function research like recently? They just had a preprint article come out. Do you know about this?
No.
They took the original strain of COVID from Wuhan. They got a sample from NIH.
This is gain of function for COVID.
Yeah. And then they decided to add the Omicron spike protein, and Omicron was the most easily transmitted. So they added that to the most severe version.
Great. Maybe throw some Ebola in there too. That would be good.
Well, I mean, it had an 80% kill rate in the lab mice.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
They're doing it in the labs at Boston University. At first I was like, okay, just because it's their professors doesn't mean they did it there, right? No, they in the preprint it says that they carried it out in their labs. So, that thing we said we don't do with a virus we would never mess with.
Well, we do it in Boston. That doesn't count, right? I don't.
Insanity. And then NIH was like, we didn't know they were doing that. Well,
all we did was write checks. We had no idea.
We just gave them grants. We didn't know what for. Right. Yeah.
I wonder if that works. I just wrote the kingpin some checks. I didn't know cocaine trafficking was happening. I'm shocked and appalled.
We would have never done that if we had known.
Yeah, that's I mean, part of me, like the scientific part of me says, well, I can actually see legitimate reason to do that research. But the less stuck in the science only aspect of the broader me looks at it and goes, well, you've been promising you're not doing it. I certainly don't want to be funding it. Like there's a lot here that's just completely dishonest. What did Fauci have to say? Did he respond to any of this?
I don't know if he did. I know that NIH came out and they were like, oh, we'll investigate this because we didn't know this was happening. Great. Investigate the stuff you've funded.
You've been doing.
Right.
Well, yeah, we'll investigate this.
But to me, I found it interesting because so on a federal level, they're not allowed to do gain of function research on stuff like this, especially not in highly populated areas, right? But so they outsourced it to universities, and apparently there are tons of level 3 and 4 biolabs in universities.
Sure. Well, they're not populated areas, at least, right?
Of course not. Of course not. And then I found this report that listed all kinds of lab leaks and just mistakes that have happened in the past couple decades in university labs, and you add all that up and it's just like where do we get to vote and say like absolutely not, you cannot do that here, go to Antarctica if you want to test gain. I was just thinking,
aren't there like remote places in Antarctica you could just be like, go here,
right,
you can be on the research team and
go for it, just
if you all die we'll make an X-Files episode out of you and don't be sad. But at least it will be contained. Yeah, well, money talks.
It sure does. They seem to have a lot of it.
Greg the Baritone says, go to the Andromeda Galaxy if you want to do this research. I think
like
it's
that.
banned in the Andromeda Galaxy, Greg. The authorities there do not, they don't like it. There's I can't find this video. Did you see the video of the mayor of New York, Eric Adams? He was outraged about, this was the other day, maybe it was last week. He was outraged about the buses of immigrants being shipped to New York City.
No.
And he was like, we didn't ask for this. We didn't we didn't place ourselves. What did he say? He said something about like, we didn't ask for this and we had no, we weren't consulted about this and we didn't ask for this and and of course, they are a sanctuary city by their own designation. So they did ask for it.
Right.
And B, I'm pretty sure the buses are coming from other cities who didn't ask for it.
Absolutely. I mean, at first when they started doing this, I remember even on the right, there was a lot of like kind of pushback, like, oh, this is just a political stunt, like whatever. No.
Yes, it is, but it's an effective political stunt. It's a
working,
great one.
because every time they complain about it, they're proving the border state's point. Every word out of their mouth.
Right.
They don't have the resources for this. Well, do you think they do?
Right. It's interesting because it's kind of that thing that Trump used to do where he would like say something that even if it was like wrong a little bit or whatever, it would be controversial but it would get the mainstream media to talk about an issue that they didn't want to talk about at all, and suddenly Americans would be informed about this issue that they were angry that Trump misrepresented somehow.
Right.
But the real information that they covered was enough to have Americans go, oh wow, that is quite a problem. He said it was 60%, but it's 58, and like who cares, right? Or whatever it was. And it reminds me of that, but like in an even more delicious way, because I completely agree that it's a political. It is a political. What was the word you used? Not game,
Stunt.
but stunt. Yes,
Yeah.
it's a political stunt. But political stunts are like, there's a reason that you do political stunts, and this is an effective one. And there's nothing, so what? Are we outlawing political stunts now? Yeah, it's a political stunt, sure. But it's a really effective political stunt. And it's getting, like you said, I think a lot of people are going, well, wait a minute. You've been able to, hey, New York, you've been getting all this virtue signaling. You've been getting all your virtue points by saying, oh, we support this and we support that. We're in a sanctuary city. Aren't we great? We're so awesome. Those horrible border towns they're just a bunch of xenophobes.
Right.
Yeah, well, good. Let's see you do your political tap dance now that there's buses in your city.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I mean, let's see. New York City declared a state of emergency over it so they could get federal funding. DC, Muriel Bowser was absolutely flipping out over it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We have a huge illegal population in and around DC. This isn't new. It's just that you got a busload of them at once, I guess. I don't know. But I mean, I just think it's working better than I anticipated, because I thought they'd be smart enough to keep their mouths shut and handle it behind the scenes, but instead they're complaining
loudly about it. Yeah, all over mainstream media, and they're making statements like this Eric Adams statement where he's saying all these things that anyone listening is like, wow, it would suck to be a city on the border, like, because he's like, we didn't ask for this, and it's a drain on resources and blah blah blah. It's like, wow, these are all the talking points that like you're just repeating them, but they're in New York, so now you care,
right?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. It's a great cell phone. Someone in chat says we should talk about Xi in China seizing absolute power in China. He didn't. I mean, he did. I mean, it's China, so it's hard to be like, he didn't seize absolute power. I'm like, I don't. Well, the communists are in charge, so their absolute power is there. But there was a term. Basically, he's the FDR of China. There's like a term limit. There was term limits, and
right.
They got rid of term limits, and he got appointed for another 5 years by his cronies in the Communist Party. And I think he ousted someone from one of the. There was like some guy who got like let out of a Politburo meeting, and no one knows why.
Right, it was very weird, and he looked so confused as to like what was happening. But is he a former leader?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was a former leader, and I think it's pretty clear that she's just consolidating power. He's purging the inner circle of political enemies, and he's, getting all his supporters, his political supporters, in positions of power. I don't want to be cynical, but I don't think that's new in China.
It's not.
So
it's really not new for like communism in general. Usually,
no.
if you're not the top guy, you're at risk at any given moment.
Right.
I don't think we'll ever see that guy again, though.
Yeah, or he'll be. I mean, even Deng Xiaoping was like ousted by Mao, but not killed, and came back, and actually was a breath of fresh air for China post Mao. And the reason that China kind of opened up a little bit and became, slightly better.
Right.
So who knows? I mean, it does smack of Mao, though. Like this,
it does.
It does really smell like, okay, he's doubled down. They did not do any of the like, oops, my bad on zero COVID policy stuff. They doubled down on all that. He's put his cronies in positions of power. They're clamping down pretty tightly. So yeah, the era of having hope for China, I think has passed. And now it's like, okay, yeah, they're on the authoritarian train for a while, and it's not slowing down. It looked like it was slowing down, right? It looked like it was like they're on the authoritarian train, but like it's kind of slowing down, and eventually it'll be better. It looks like it's got a second wind, and
yeah, I think they kind of tried to, I don't know, like kind of put a glowy filter on it to be more palatable to the Western world for a little while, and now it's unnecessary. So back to the old tactics.
Yeah.
But it's interesting the term limit thing, because way back when I was in college, like doing international relations classes, I found out. So Putin, for years, he would bounce back and forth between two titles, either like the president or prime minister. Like there are two positions one has more power, but they have to work together. So what he would do is, before the election, he would write a bill, shift the power to the other position, and then get elected to that one, because you weren't allowed to take the position twice in a row. You could keep getting elected forever, but just not back to back. So he was just shifting it back and forth, and I guess he got bored and he just like did away with that, so he doesn't have to do that anymore. But I just thought, I mean, because they were trying to prevent.
I mean, it is kind of a pain. You're going to be a tyrant. Yeah.
It's a lot of work. Yeah. They were trying to prevent another, Stalin type that just comes in and stays in power. He's like, we can work with that.
Yeah. Someone in chat says that Kissinger wrote a book about, in commie Chinese history, this is usually the beginning of an implosion.
Interesting.
Is that true? I mean, there's not a lot of commie Chinese history. I mean, there's some, but Mao did this regularly.
Mm-hmm.
The implosion happened when he died. Yeah, I don't know I don't know when the instances of that were in the past, right? And then they've been kind of on the Deng Xiaoping trajectory for ever since, until Xi. So, I don't know. Sucks to be stuck in China.
Yeah.
So, all right. I don't have anything else. What about you, Juliet?
I don't think so.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully we'll have a lot coming up with the midterms. Oh, wait, there was supposed to be some big announcement about election integrity today.
There is?
Oh, there was. I saw a bunch
Does
of
anyone know about this?
news blasts saying that they were going to announce that like something in the election infrastructure was at risk, like an intelligence bulletin or something. I was like, well, that's not possible. We've spent the past
All the Republican
2 years,
districts have a problem.
right? We've spent years explaining to us that there's no way that could happen.
Yeah, I don't see anything. I'm looking now. I don't
Okay.
see anything like popping
Yeah.
up in the news right now. But
I usually I just follow like Disclosed TV and Jack Posobiec on Telegram, and so usually my phone like tells me when big things happen, and I never got another bulletin, so maybe they didn't.
Yeah, I don't see it. But
I'm waiting for that though. Like it's clear, something crazy.
yeah, who knows? I did like that. I did like that Elon Musk called Gary Kasparov, the chess dude, an idiot. Did you see that?
Yeah.
he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like I'll admit he's almost as good at chess as my iPhone, but he's still an idiot. Like it was some like total burn because the guy's like he was mad. The guy was mad at Elon for proposing that they like have some kind of peace in Ukraine, and like he wants, so yeah, I don't have that tweet. Wait, hold on, maybe I can find the tweet. I'll read it. Yeah, he writes, well, Kasparov is the guy. Well, it's true that Kasparov is almost as good at playing chess as my iPhone. He is otherwise an idiot.
I mean, he is so entertaining because he doesn't have
I
any
know.
reason to not just speak his mind. He's
know.
Elon Musk.
Yeah,
I thought
he
it
just
was really funny when he said he wasn't going to pay for Starlink anymore. And then
yes,
somebody said, oh, this comes right after one of the Ukrainians told him to fuck off. And he was like, I'm just doing what I was told.
yeah.
It's amazing.
It's also funny because it's not funny, but it's obnoxious to me that like he talk about looking a gift horse in the mouth. He's like, yeah, sure, I'll do this thing.
Huh?
And then it's like saying, yeah, you can crash at my place. And then like 6 months go by and you're like, are you still on the fucking couch? Like maybe at some point I might have to charge you rent, dude. And the guy's
Right.
like all indignant about it. How dare you charge me rent? I'm going through a hard time right now. It's like, Jesus
Right.
Christ, fuck off.
Uh-huh. Yes. Well, and the week before that, they were flipping out on Elon because Starlink wasn't working on the front lines, and they're like, "Well, what are you doing?" And then Russia
I'm
was
not
like,
paying any. Oh wait, never. I can't say that.
Russia was like, "Yeah, we figured out how to jam it in localized areas." Duh!
Huh.
It's a grid of satellites that are moving. So if it's only one area that's not working, something's jamming it. It's not
So
like
can you jam? Let's see. Is it possible to send electromagnetic waves over an area in space so that whenever a satellite goes through it, it has some trouble? I bet that's not that difficult to figure out.
Right. It just took them a little while. Yeah. And but everybody was
got to build something special for it. Okay, fine.
Furious with Elon. Even one of the intelligence creepy guys that you see on the news occasionally, he was even like, we might have to investigate this. Investigate what? Like, what did Elon do? He gave them free communications when they otherwise would have had nothing.
But this is a classical leftist thing where like you give them something and they complain about it, and then it becomes a requirement, right? And then they complain about if it's not good enough. So yeah. Someone says, can we jam Biden's satellite hearing aid?
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if he has. Does he have a satellite hearing aid? We could jam his hearing aid.
I feel like he'd just find a cane and start yelling at people if he didn't have the voice.
How would it get worse is my question. Like,
right.
How would you be able to tell? Hey, look, he's speaking nonsense now.
Well.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm sorry that Scotty didn't show up, everyone, today. I don't know what's going on. I'll DM her afterwards, but hopefully we'll have her back at some point in the future. And but it was a lovely conversation, Juliet. You and I.
It worked out.
We got to do our thing. Yeah, it was all good.
Yeah.
anything we should be reminding people of before we leave? What do we got? Book club on Sunday.
Sunday, yeah. We have a full deck of shows this week, right?
I think so. 451 tomorrow. Rebel Civics on Wednesday. Probably Dangerous Thoughts on Wednesday. I'm such a lazy bum. Let's hope it's Dangerous Thoughts on Wednesday.
Right.
Thursday, Token Minority Report. Friday, Occasional Levity still this week. Is that correct?
Yep.
All right. And there was a Free Association episode last Friday, in case you missed it. Was it last Friday or Thursday? Friday, I think.
I think it was Friday.
Yeah, with the CEO of Utreon, which is super interesting. Alex did that, so if you want to check it out, go do that. And
for
if
those who don't know what Utreon is, because I didn't either, it's another like alt tech free speech streaming platform.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's pretty dedicated to free speech and stuff. It's not like, it's not just another alt tech one that's different. It's like, it is dedicated, just like some of the other ones claim to be too. So
right.
And you know what? I apologize to people on Rumble. I've been looking at YouTube comments, and I've been meaning to look at Rumble chats instead, because we are trying to focus more on Rumble because YouTube does in fact suck. I'm gonna go look in Rumble chats now. I'm just gonna say hi to Ron Green 1, JBSX, and anyone else that's there. Thank you for watching us on Rumble.
Rumble really needs to
I know.
pop out their chat like everybody else, so that you don't have to have the whole,
I know. I want a chat pop out box and I couldn't find it. And so
right.
Anyway, if you're watching on Rumble, thank you very much. Don't miss. I was going to say Fahrenheit 451, but it's not that. It's Slaughterhouse 5.
Yeah.
This Sunday with Juliet at what time?
2 p.m. Eastern.
2 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah.
All right, everyone.
All
Thank
right,
you all.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one. See you next time. Thanks for sticking around until the end. If you're new to Unsafe Space, check out our deep content library that includes discussions with everyone from James Lindsay to Brett Weinstein. And please consider helping to fund our work by visiting unsafespace.com/donate. You can find us on a variety of social media platforms, and you can find a community of like-minded individuals on our Unsafe Space Discord server, which is open to financial supporters at any level. We hope to see you there.
Warning. This is an unsafe space. Dangerous ideas have been detected. It would be better for your health if you forgot what you just heard. That should be easy for someone of your intelligence. The following co-conspirators are hereby ordered to watch CNN. Experts agree that 87,000 new tax collectors will make inflation feel like less of a problem. I think we can agree that the FBI's track record speaks for itself. If you think about it, only government-sanctioned experts should be allowed to express opinions. But don't. Think about it, I mean. That's not your job. Thinking has been scientifically proven to be less efficient than compliance. Science, scientific, and scientifically are registered trademarks of the World Economic Forum. Unauthorized use is prohibited. Computer voice courtesy. Never mind, that last line is fake news. Please disregard it and return to your safe space immediately. There will be cake.